What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host Jimmy Haskell, the Rascal. And in this episode, we're going to discuss PFF's recent ranking of all 32 running back units ahead of the 2021 season. Before we do, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and we'd greatly appreciate it. But Jimmy, is this one going to have us as fired up as the last couple? Because those last were a little disrespectful. Are we going down the same road, Jimbo?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that we are, and I think our fans will feel or not. Excuse me, not our fans. The fans of the Ravens, the ones that view our show, will find that they will feel the same way that we're feeling about this list. And I think one of the cool things we're going to be doing is we're just going to do a whole series, every positional. We're going to do our reflections and thoughts on every positional ranking from PFF. So make sure you stay tuned and see them all. But certainly, I think this one will incite anger, not only from us, but all of Ravens Nation. I'm sure the running backs are using that for motivation. So we should dig right into it, don't you think?
Let's do it. Let's start with the number one team on this list. It shouldn't come as much of a surprise to many, at least it doesn't to us. And it is, of course, the Cleveland Browns at number one. They have a monster 1-2 punch, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And really, those two are so good. It doesn't matter who the third one is. They deserve to be number one because those two are both, in their own right, top 10 running backs by themselves. So, no arguments there.
Yeah, to have a guy that led the league in rushing yards one year as your de facto number two is just, it's just ridiculous to me. That's one of the most value-laden deals, I think, that, other than the fact that he's always an off-field risk. I know he's gotten, not necessarily domestic, but I know he's had some close calls and things like that as far as getting off and friendly cops letting him go and things. So, but as far as his on-field play, extremely valuable contract there, right? Like, that's just an insane room. I think we both agree with that. And honestly, I agree with the Colts as well because they have a true, they have a three-headed monster. Jonathan Taylor, I know you liked him a ton coming out of the draft, Glenn. And he proved you right in his ability to produce. And then Hines is just an absolute joystick, right? The guy just, you can't touch him. And then, Mac, I think you mentioned he'll be coming back. He's coming back off of, is it an Achilles or is it an ACL?
I think it was an Achilles, if I remember right.
But, he was a baller, before the injury. So they have a lot of depth and talent there. So I don't think their ceiling is as high as the Browns, but their floor is extremely high in the depth that they have and the versatility in the position.
Absolutely. They got a good mix of guys that can do a bunch of different things. I think that Nyheim Hines is one of the more underrated guys in the league. So no arguments really there. I'm fine with it. New Orleans Saints come in at number 3. And again, really no disagreement here. Alvin Kamara is one of the top backs in all of football. And Latavius Murray is another underrated guy who, has had a really, really good career. He came over after, I believe he was with the Vikings for a long time. And he comes over here and backs up Alvin Kamara after they lost Mark Ingram, who was the primary backup, and he stepped right in, and they haven't missed a beat. So no arguments for the top 3. Fine with that. Do you have any disagreements there?
Other than there's not a ton of depth. Latavius Murray is what he is, but not a ton of depth. That's the only thing I would say. So I was a little surprised that they're at 3.
Okay.
He's obviously good, but there's a steep drop off after Kamara. So, and then 4, I was also a little surprised with as well. You'll see on these top like 5, 6, it's really, other than the Browns because they're kind of an anomaly, it's really about the lead dog that they have in the room. And obviously Dalvin Cook is a lead dog and obviously an extremely productive player. So he's bringing that rating up. And Madison did some things to show that he can fill in when he's called upon, but still not a ton of depth there as well. I would say that it's very safe to say thus far that other than the Browns and maybe the Colts, we have the best number 2, in comparison to these other lists, because I'd take Gus over Madison and over Latavius Murray at the drop of a hat. At this point, if you're calling Gus our number 2. But that's neither here nor there. The Dallas Cowboys are number 5. I'd like to know your thoughts on this one, Glenn. I had Zeke last year. on my fantasy team. And it's weird because he's like the quietest 15 points sometimes in fantasy because of his volume. But he didn't have an illustrious, he didn't have an incredible year last year. How are you with placing the Dallas Cowboys at number 5?
Yeah, I'm not. It's kind of interesting with him because you wonder, is it that he's regressing in his talent, or was it just the team falling apart around him? They had a bunch of issues on the up front in the offensive line. Obviously, the Dak Prescott injury affected the entire team, and they weren't able to find quality quarterback play like most teams would struggle with after their number one, Dak Prescott, went down. So this is a big year for him to kind of prove something because Tony Pollard, he's a young guy. He's only 23 years old. He's up and coming. He's got a lot of speed out of the backfield. And some are predicting that his workload is going to increase even with Zeke, healthy and on the field because they like what they saw from Pollard. So I guess that remains to be seen. It doesn't really shock me because Ezekiel Elliott, if he's healthy and the team is healthy around him, is like you said, he's so consistent in what he gets you that it doesn't really surprise me. But yeah, so I mean, I guess I'm okay with it. I think that it surprises me that the team I'm about to go into now isn't above them, and that's the Tennessee Titans, because as we're going to see with most of these teams, it's the number one guy pulling up the group. And I mean, is there a better number one? Like, is there any running back that you would take over Derrick Henry if you're starting your fantasy team? And when you consider only 2 running backs had over 300 carries last year, it was Dalvin Cook with 312, and then Derrick Henry with 378, which is, by the way, over 100 more carries than the player with in third place on this list, with Josh Jacobs at 273. So unprecedented workload. And then he takes that unprecedented workload and turns into 5.4 yards per carry, goes for over 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns on the ground. So I'm a little surprised that Derrick Henry by himself isn't pulling his team up higher on this list, despite the fact that there's really nothing behind him. I mean, you talk about Jeremy McNichols, who honestly I haven't heard much about. The only reason I knew his name is because, the Ravens have been playing the Titans a lot lately, and we've had members of the media on to talk about who, what would happen if Derrick Henry were to miss some games, who would be that guy. And that's the only reason I even know who Jeremy McNichols is, because I'm sure he's not getting a lot of clock. Nobody's getting a lot of snaps behind Derrick Henry. So yeah, a little surprised that they're at 6, because I think that just Derrick Henry alone should propel them into the top 5.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And then after that, you have the Carolina Panthers with McCaffrey, who's also question mark in that he's coming back from an injury. But we also get, he's ultra productive and, does a really great job at doing everything on the field. So I'm going to pass it to you here, Glenn, because my dog is barking uncontrollably.
Greeting the neighbors. Yeah, McCaffrey he's a stud. He was an all-pro at running back as well as an all-pro as a slot receiver. So, that's one of the guys that you say pulls the list up. Now, they lost Mike Davis in free agency, which was a big loss because Mike Davis filled in very respectfully behind McCaffrey when he went down, and actually carried some fantasy teams along the way that were disappointed to see Christian. Now, he died off towards the end of the year, didn't really, carry and sustain throughout. But then they replaced him with a 4th-round rookie, Chuba Hubbard, who a lot of people like this guy. I mean, it still remains to be seen what a rookie's going to bring you, but certainly a lot of draft pundits were high on the upside that Hubbard brings into the league, so we'll have to wait and see. But when healthy, there's not many backs better than Christian McCaffrey, especially when you consider that he's an all-pro slot receiver to go along with all that he does out of the backfield. So no arguments on putting them there, but I'm starting to get a little agitated, Jimbo.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm at the point where you know what? Look, we got the Raiders, got the Broncos in at number 10, got the Packers. Let's figure out where these Ravens are, because every single one that goes by, I get more and more upset. The Bears at 11, the Giants at 12. You'll notice the Ravens are still not there. Number 13, lowly 13, the Baltimore Ravens. So, really interesting point and a relatively astute point here made by DK is that, it's really, people have this cop out of giving all the credit to Lamar Jackson in the success of the offense. And it's funny because, any pundit, PFF included, will be the first to say, look, the run scheme is the reason that the wide receivers suck, but they suck. That's the way that they rank them in most cases. They're not good. So they discredit the running backs the wide receivers. But then the number one rushing attack in history, all right, in the history of the NFL, is not ranked higher than 13. So if you discredit, if you say that the lack of passing based on the scheme is why the wide receivers are terrible, and they're terrible, then why isn't it that the scheme and the ultra match with the ultimate production that the guys have put forth, why isn't that then given more love? Like, you can't just discredit both ends of the spectrum, right? Yep. Like, if you're going to say this, they suck because of this, then it's got to go to another place. And so I'm frustrated that we're at 13 and there's a couple questionable teams, and I'd like to know your thoughts as well. I won't dig too far into it, but Daniel, if you scroll up a little bit, I just want to mention a couple teams, and Glenn, I'll let you dig into it. One that really had a back to the the early 1900s, had a bee in my bonnet here, was the Denver Broncos. So we can scroll up to the Denver Broncos here. Who I think made a terrible decision by getting rid of Philip Lindsay. Their lead dog is Melvin Gordon, who, in my opinion, can't sniff J.K. Dobbins' jockstrap right now based on his previous injuries and overall production. I would take Gus Edwards all day and take it to the bank over Melvin Gordon, just my opinion. And you lost the most dynamic guy in that room in Philip Lindsay. So I don't know how you put these guys, this room, in front of the Baltimore Ravens team, the Baltimore Ravens running back room. That was one that particularly, really, really upset me.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's one of the many that had me fired up because, I mean, look, you're projecting a lot when you're talking about what Javonte Williams is going to bring. Yeah, he was a very elusive back in college, but how many times have we seen rookie running backs or successful running backs in college not translate to the NFL? So even if you think he's gonna, you don't know yet. And then Melvin Gordon, yeah, he had a pretty good year last year. He had a nice year. He had just under 1,000 yards, but he averaged 4.6 yards per carry. That's not better, or even that's not what the Ravens put out there. I mean, you're talking about Gus Edwards, who went for 5 yards a carry, and J.K. Dobbins, who went for 6 yards a carry. So I'm not really sure.
It's funny because everyone thinks we're just going to run the ball, and then all of a sudden our running backs are top 5 in the league in yards per carry, but everyone knows we're going to run it.
Yep.
So how?
And this is what gets me. They say it right in the description below when they show the Ravens at 13. They say the Ravens would rank much higher here if Lamar Jackson were factored into the rankings. His unique ability as a runner and the respect that defenses must give it is what drives this rushing attack. But Baltimore will have several quality running backs in the backfield heading into next season. It's like they don't even. It's just like all Lamar Jackson and discredit all the running backs. And they says J.K. is coming off a rookie season, which he earned a rushing grade of 82, averaged 6 yards a carry.
No big deal.
Yeah, no biggie, just 6 yards a carry, but just best running back yards per carry in the entire league. Gus Edwards, one of the highest graded running backs in the league over the past 3 years. And then the last sentence here, they, along with Jackson, should once again lead one of the NFL's most efficient rushing attacks. It's not one of, it's the most efficient rushing attack in the league. There's no doubt about it.
It's not even just efficiency, right? Like, in any counting number, you could put us up against anything, and we're going to be ahead of the pack, right? Like, that's just the way that it is. Not even just efficiency.
Right. In every metric, the Ravens are, standouts. And then the Bears at number 11. The Bears, Jimmy? The Bears? What? David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen? Hell no, Jimmy. Absolutely not am I taking those two over. I don't care what offense you put them in. If you swap our running back room and give them to Chicago Bears, they are going to have a better rushing attack than they had than they would if they had David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, that is just the most nonsensical thing. I can't even understand. And the Raiders, Jimmy, Josh Jacobs is an okay back. Okay, I'm not saying he's a bum. Okay, he's good at breaking tackles. He makes guys miss. But look, he had 273 carries and barely broke 1,000 yards. He was third in the league in rushing total. as far as attempts and barely broke 1,000 yards.
Right.
He averaged 3.9 a carry. The bare minimum to be a quality back in the league is 4 yards a carry. The bare minimum. If you can't even get to that, I'm sorry, I'm not impressed. I mean, if anyone gets the workload, it's like on a bad NBA team. Someone's got to score the points.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me this guy's scoring 25, okay, how many shot attempts does he get a game? Is he getting 30 attempts a game?
Right.
Because then I'm not impressed. I mean, someone has to run the ball. So if you're going to give a guy 273 carries, he's going to put up numbers. He's going to get some. He's going to get some scores. He's going to get some yards. But you got to look into the numbers a little more and see that 3.9 yards per carry. I'm sorry, that's not moving the needle for me. Yeah. So when I look at, and especially when you're talking about projecting to going into this year, everyone knows that J.K. Dobbins was taking a back seat in the initial part of the season because of the lack of offseason, and he was a rookie. And we also already had some established veterans. There's no doubt that J.K. is going to see a massive increase in his workload and also a massive improvement. The biggest improvement is made from years 1 to 2. Well, is there any year where a 1 to 2 could have a bigger jump than a year where his first year had 0 offseason? I mean, it is just, Jimmy, I'm about to lose my mind and cancel our PFF subscription.
We will no longer be patronizing your product.
Unreal.
Look, but at the end of the day, what you have to do is you have to do that brain exercise, that thought exercise in which you remove our guys, right? Like you brought a perfect example. If you took J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and replaced them with the top 2 backs in Denver, you're telling me they're not going to be a better backfield? You're outside your mind. You're just wrong. One time, I said this the other day, one time as a child, one of the most impactful moments in my life, my dad said, "Son, you have been fooled. You are wrong." That simply, right? And I was like, wow, he's right. I'm just wrong. Like, it's very simple. Like, if you go up a little bit, so I kind of want to do this, take it the next step. Obviously, we've identified the Broncos. Same idea with Chicago Bears. In any offense, we're going to be, our pair of backs is going to be better. Now, I can see Green Bay in that they have a ton of depth with A.J. Dillon, with Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams.
I think Jamal's gone.
Is he? Oh, you're right. Didn't he?
Yeah.
Jamal is gone. You're right.
Hey,
yeah. So it's just Aaron. It's just Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. I would make the argument that I think that between those two, I'd rather have J.K. and Gus. Just my argument.
Why don't they get knocked down by the fact that they have an MVP who threw for 48 touchdowns and 5 interceptions? They don't discredit their running backs and go, well, because they're so concerned with the air attack that Aaron Rodgers can bring, so we're not going to. But yet they knock us down for the Lamar Jackson factor.
When once again, everyone knows we're going to run the football and we still do it. To me, that's true dominance. That's true talent in that I can say, you know what I'm doing and you still can't stop me. That's my favorite thing. My favorite thing when people say, make him go right, he's left-handed. Dude, you know I'm going to go left and I'm still going to beat you left.
Yep.
Like, I'm just dominating you. Like, it's the same thing. You know we're going to run the ball. You know JK's going to get the ball. You know Gus is going to get the ball. And they're both over 5 a carry. Like, that deserves more credit.
Just to double down on my Josh Jacobs take, Josh Jacobs had 140 more carries than J.K. Dobbins, and he had barely over 200 more yards. So if J.K. Dobbins averaged 2 yards a carry, which he averaged 3 times that amount on the year, he would have beaten him in yards for the season if he would have gotten equal carries. I mean, I don't understand this list.
So would you swap then the Kenyon Drake and Josh Jacobs? So if you did that same thing and you plugged in Gus and JK, are they better than that room even with Kenyon Drake?
Not even close.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I just don't know if I'm drinking the purple Kool-Aid or not. But I'm
3.9 a carry, dude. I mean,
so let's go up a little higher then. Let's go back up to who's 7? Carolina. Now, and is this where it stops for you?
Well, here's where you can have arguments. Like I could argue with you and say that, well, behind Christian, there's not a lot of depth, and we know what Gus is. Gus is a bell cow. If JK were to be gone for 5 weeks,
no drop off.
As long as we knew we had Gus, we'd be fine. Yeah. Absolutely fine. Yep. Whereas if Christian were to go, we don't really know now that Mike Davis is gone what Chuba Hubbard can really get done in the league. We haven't seen it. So I can make arguments, but I also can make an argument on the opposite side and say Christian is so good that when healthy, he pulls up the group. So I can make arguments from 7 and up. I could make about our. I can't make an argument for the Raiders, for the Bears. I mean,
The Broncos.
The Broncos. I just don't understand
Packers.
it. I mean, the Packers, you can make an argument in the statistics because you could say, well, Aaron Jones had so many touchdowns and he had this, he had that. Even though I would gladly argue with a Packer fan on whether, whose room is better. But some of them are just egregious and ridiculous and blasphemous, as Stephen A. always likes to say.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. So as objectively as possible, we are a Ravens show. And DK, chime in here at the bottom. We'd like to know your take. Where do you rank? I'm going to give you my rank, then you give me yours, Glenn. Where would you put the Ravens on this list? I'm going at 7. I'm going 7 because I don't know. Once again, there's a steep drop off after McCaffrey, and we don't know what he's going to be coming off of an injury.
That's fair.
And subjectively, so like not objectively, I put him at 5.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably me with a little bit of like purple Kool-Aid in my veins. But
fair.
I will say this to justify my argument, even at 5. Like I said before, teams know what we're doing, and we're still the best in the league at it. That's the stupidity of it, right? Like that's how incredibly dominant these guys have to be, in that they know what's happening and we still do it. It's just insane. Who's the best scorer of all time in the NBA? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Skyhook, absolutely unstoppable.
Yep.
Like
how about the best closer in baseball of all time, Mariano Rivera? He threw one pitch every time. There was no signals being laid down by the catcher. No, there was one pitch. It was coming. It was the cutter, and there wasn't a damn thing you could do about it.
Right. So
yeah, so you're at 5 if subjectively, and you're at 7 objectively.
7. Yeah.
So to me, I would say 8 at the very lowest. At the very lowest, you're 8. And honestly, I have a little bit of a beef. I respect the Colts running back. I think they're high on this list. I think number 2 is high. And you know me, I like Nyheim Hines. I was a huge Jonathan Taylor coming out. And I think Marlon Mack, if he can come back to form, is a really good player.
You think the Titans should be number 2? Is that crazy?
No, it's not crazy, because that daggone Derrick Henry is something special. And we're not Titans fans. Believe me. I mean, we don't like the Titans, but I'm giving credit where it's due.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry should by himself pull his team into the top 5, and I think into the top 3. So I think they're really high on the running backs for the Indianapolis Colts, and they're fine. But it's not like Jonathan Taylor averaged 5 yards a carry. I mean, that's good. That's good. But he had a ton of work. So I'm not really, but again, I'm okay. You can make an argument there because they have a lot of depth. They got a bunch of good guys in the room, so you can make an argument. But there is no way the Ravens should be any lower than 8th on this list. It's absolutely ridiculous to put them at 13. You're talking about the best rushing team in history, and they don't have a top 10. They don't have a top 12 running back room. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. PFF, you're killing me. And DK, he says 5th place because you can tell a lot from yards per carry. You're absolutely right. I mean, volume can turn it. Look, if you're a good player, you're a compiler. And some of these guys are just compilers. I mean, you get enough carries like Josh Jacobs did, you can turn 3.9 yards per carry into over 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns because they just keep giving you the ball, and eventually you're going to fall headfirst into something. So it's absolutely ridiculous. I agree with you guys. This is way too low. But yeah, unless you have anything else, I want to know what the people think.
Yeah,
let us know what you think in the comments. What is PFF doing? Are they just trying to piss off the flock because they're doing a darn good job of it? But let us know what you guys think, and we'll be back soon.